Everyone, first of all, I would also like to thank the people at ETF to invite me to this panel. I totally agree with everything Tiona says, but I want to add some things to it. For me, as a teacher and as a future classroom lab ambassador, I think it's very important to get a good relationship between the pupils and the teachers. If that relationship is good, is a relationship of understanding with each other, you immediately get a good vibe in your classroom, and you immediately get good collaboration between pupils themselves or between the teacher and the pupil. So for me, the relationship with pupils is a central part of that. Also, and especially in face-to-face scenarios, I also strongly believe that the learning environment, the classroom, the learning environment that we teach in is also very important to increase motivation of pupils and so on. Imagine pupils sitting in a small, crowded, dark classroom with posters on the wall that are 60 years old. That's not really inspiring for them. Where if they sit in an open, spacey, bright classroom with some colors in there, with some flexible furniture so they can organize themselves according to the learning activity they are doing, that will bring much more motivation to the pupils. And as soon as pupils are motivated and eager to learn, it's much more fun being a teacher as well.
Thank you, Ben. I'll hand over to Mikhail from Georgia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Florian, and I would say thank to ETF team and say thank to everyone who is watching us now. I think that it's more difficult to engage in students in online lessons compared to face-to-face learning. So great effort is needed by the teachers to ensure students' engagement. Also, teachers need technical knowledge, and it should be increased, and they must be familiar with online tools because it's different from the face-to-face learning. Also, as you know, vocational education is focused to develop practical skills, and it's difficult to teach practical modules and subjects online. So the solution at that moment, I think that it's simulation software, more engagement students, more class activities to be this everything clear and give us a good summary. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We'll finish that first round with a quick reaction on that first question, and we'll go into more depth discussion. Michael from Austria, please. What's your first statement on that?
Yeah, I think I agree with Ben that the relationship to the pupils is really we have to stay communicate with them. Also in the distance learning phase, and when the relationship is good, so we can communicate much better in a probably distance learning situation. And also, I think when we start from the face-to-face setting, without this COVID-19 crash, I think there wouldn't be any improvement so far we had now. So it was a crash, and now we try to transform the class setting into the e-learning setting. And this is where I thought communication is so the first thing you have to make sure that it works. And it's all about the relationship between pupil and teachers. And yeah, I see it like Ben.
Thank you, Michael. I hand over to Julian. You're muted, I guess. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, well, lots has been said. Thank you for inviting me. I mean, I guess that perhaps I could say as a general guidance that what's important here always is to think about not what the teacher is doing, but what the learner is doing. If that, I find that in teacher professional development generally is a very important principle, because although a teacher controls what she does, what's really important is what the learner is doing. Is the learner attending? Is the learner learning? Is the learner interacting? And I think that one of the difficulties we face is that we're, as teachers, we've developed intuitively a kind of understanding of what the student is doing when we're teaching. We've learned that in training, we've learned that over years of teaching. We kind of know that when we're speaking, they might be thinking about it, or we know that, you know, if we ask them to write, what kind of skills they're practicing. What we don't really know yet, or what a lot of us don't know yet, is what the student is doing when we're teaching to them at a distance online. We haven't got a very good feel for what they're actually doing, whether they're thinking or reflecting or reviewing or just dozing. And I think we need to learn that, because if you know, we need to get an understanding of what the learner is doing. And that's something I think we're going to come back to as in the discussion today. This because it's always, everything we do as teachers is about what we can get the learner to do. Because if we're doing it all, the learner's not learning. It's always going to be about the actions, the thoughts, the movements, the interactions, the skills, everything that they're doing. So if I can just leave it at that point at the minute, and that's something perhaps we could return to later.
Thank you very much, Julian. You go into the direction I was interested as well. So back to the whole panel. The initial question was what was needed to increase learner activity, and a couple of very important points were made. So when we dig a bit deeper, what are very simple tips and tricks to make the learner be active in learning? Michael, please.
Yes, I think one thing is that the high engagement can be found when they are heard and perceived. So we have to give them the chance to maybe give us as a teacher feedback what's to do with a live, for example, a live session, or how to use the learning environment, the e-learning environment, and we have to hear them and really take an eye on their opinions. So I think this is the first step when we change our lessons into maybe e-learning setting. We have to talk to the students first in the first week. When we do these first actions, we have to get feedback from them and then try to do it what they think we should do. Okay, thanks. Ben, you have a direct reaction?
Yeah, I agree with Michael that getting the feedback from the pupils is very important as well, of course. But I also feel that whether it is in a face-to-face environment or whether it's in a virtual environment, whether it's teaching online, that pupils should try to work on real-life examples. It doesn't have to be that they have to make an assignment just for me as a teacher, but let them make an assignment, let them make a project that they can show off to people in companies from the subjects or from the study they are taking. For instance, if it's pupils in cooking classes, let them create dishes and let cooks come in to taste those dishes and give feedback, or maybe let them make a movie clip online of what they're doing and give that to cooks of restaurants and let them provide feedback on it. It makes the learning more real life like. And my experience in that case is that it motivates the pupils much more than if they just have to make an assignment for the teacher.
Thanks, Ben. I see Tiona and then Julian, please.
Yes, I'd agree with colleagues and with the opinions, and I'd say that the most important from my experience, I can say, is take the interest of students into consideration, because this is what motivates the students most of all, and to show them the opportunities regarding this is face-to-face learning or online learning, to give them possibilities and opportunity to show them how they can use this knowledge acquired in the process, and to give them these opportunities and to show them. Yeah, this was what I wanted to say. Thank you.
If I can come in now, I mean, I think that, you know, I fully agree with my colleagues, but I just like to sort of chip in a couple of points. I mean, I think that as teachers, we're very aware of the importance of feedback. I mean, both to confirm, but also to develop the knowledge and the skills of our students. But when we're online, when we're at a distance, it's difficult to do it. You know, if you have a lot of students and they're distributed out there and you can't easily grab their attention through facial reactions, it's difficult to give them that feedback. I mean, it's something which teachers are incredibly skilled at in the classroom, of putting themselves about, of being there for every student all the time. And remotely, we're not so good at doing that. I'm certainly not so good at doing that. So one of the things I would encourage teachers to do is not to try and do it all themselves, not to try and be the individual which is giving all the feedback all the time to every learner. I mean, you've got to set up situations whereby students are feeding back to one another, either in pairs or in groups or at different times. Otherwise, you wear yourself out in trying to be the hub through which all the feedback is going. Without feedback, it won't work. If you try and do all the feedback yourself, I think you'll kill yourself. So I think we need to be smart here about becoming managers and facilitators of feedback, and not being, you know, having a monopoly over feedback provision.
Thank you, Julian. Michael, you're muted.
Yes, so I agree, colleagues, of course, and I think that very important thing is to determine the individual needs of students. It's very important, and the teacher should be teachers should interest the students, because at first when students come to us, they don't know exactly what they want. Also, they are interested in what will be a success for them, how can they develop, and etc. So the main purpose of the teacher, I think, that it's to determine individual needs of students, and the lesson must be interactive, and the teacher should interest them. It should suit the interest of the students, of course, and the teacher must provide many practical exercises for them, because it's very interesting, and they can see at that moment what's real profession and what they can do. Only just lecture and theoretical talks is not effective. That's what I think.
Thank you, Mikhail. Michael also wanted to come in.
Yeah, sorry, I was unmuted. Julian said that we can give feedback to all of them, and in the first month I was absolutely engaged and tried to do everything I can. And so I'm a math teacher, and I sent an assignment, and I wanted the pupils to turn in a video where they show me the solution of an example. And I did it with 3 classes simultaneously. And at the end of the day, there were 70 videos with a length between 2 and 10 minutes. And it was absolutely not possible to give them particular feedback to all in the video was said. So I just get to focus on the solution. When it was good, then okay, fine. Yeah, and I was not really getting into the video. So then I started, and Julian said it, I grouped them to 4 to 5 students and let them make videos together, and with a limit of 5 minutes. So in a special setting, you have to make restrictions. And so the 5 minutes were okay. I had around 5-6 videos then, and it was absolutely possible to give them feedback. And what I saw in the first try with the single videos was the high engagement of them, because they were absolutely stunning videos. And one student wrote me, I hope it's okay, the video, because I tried it, I think 5 to 10 times, because I was not really happy with the video. And this was, for me, a way where I think that especially a video, and I don't have a special task to give them. It was a normal example from the book, but with the combination to make a video to explain the solution, I I was more in their world, and so together they were really good outcome. And so I agree with Julian, don't try to give every single student feedback all the time, because it's really not possible, because we don't have 36 hours a day.
Julian, you directly want to react to that?
Yeah, no, I think that that's the sort of thing we're learning how to do, and I think that it's also this blending between what you're doing synchronously with the whole class and what you're asking the learners to do outside of that. And I think that's an area where we're getting much smarter. I mean, you know, conventionally in a classroom, you did everything. You did the plenary stuff, but then you let students get on with things, and you were always there, present. But I think under the new regime, you know, we're going to have to step back more, and it's going to be more broken up. I think there will be some plenary activity, synchronous activity that you do with your class, and then there's going to be times where they're working individually or they're working with groups, and you're not trying to conduct them like an orchestra all the time together, because in order to learn, they have to produce outputs such as video or such as text or such as images or such as discussions, and they need space to do these, or they won't learn, or they won't be motivated, or they won't be able to make mistakes. So we have to, as teachers, plan in a more complex way, in a less sort of homogeneous way, a whole mixture of learning activities which are going on at different times, in different places, in different groupings.
Thank you, Julian. I guess listening to the discussion so far, I feel we're developing into a direction where we can answer another question that was raised beforehand by participants. It's actually, how do we adapt an existing VET program to the learning environment that is now you know, either distance or blended? And we also have a question here in the chat about that question. How do you deal with that situation where some are still at home, some are in the school, so the blended learning situation for some? So I wondered, what response can we give to them? How do you adapt an existing program? How do you deal with that? Of course, we have the practical learning part. That is the more difficult one. We'll focus on that a bit later. But let's focus first on the theoretic part. How do you adapt an existing program? And how do you ensure that learning still is active? Or if it was not active before in a normal program, how can you improve through being online in a full distance or blended learning situation? Anyone to start? Maybe Ben, I hand over to you.
Yes, thank you. Well, at this moment, I'm actually in a situation where most of my pupils are in the classroom, but some of them are at home because they're not sick, but someone in the family was sick, so they have to stay in quarantine, and so on. And yeah, I must say, it's very hard to actually combine the situation where pupils are in the classroom and still at home. Sometimes I try to just open up my my webcam and my microphone and stream the things I do in the classroom together with the pupil. But then I come to the question that Julian said. What is the pupil doing at home at the moment I am teaching? It's just on a very small screen on my computer. I don't actually see his face very good, so I don't know what is he thinking. Does he understand what I'm saying or not? Does he have questions or not? So that makes it very hard. In other situations, I give them some individual exercises they can work on while pupils are making their exercises or their work in the classroom. But then again, making exercises is the hard part of learning for a lot of pupils, and you're not available as a teacher at that moment to help them. And of course, there are things like WhatsApp and whatever to get in contact with each other, but it's not the same. So for me, it's still struggling. I'm still struggling with it, how to do it in the the best possible way to give the best possible learning experience to all of my pupils. So I think it's still very hard.
Thank you very much, Ben. What I wanted to ask in addition to that, I see Tiana, I give first the word to you before I move on. Tiana, and then Michael again.
Thank you. In my opinion, this is really a complex issue to increase the engagement of students in distance learning. But as you mentioned, it is less complex when we are teaching more theoretical modules. And I have the experience of teaching entrepreneurship, which is project-based, but is more theoretical than other modules in it. So I think that the solution here could be using different teaching methods like group working, for example, working on projects. And I have experience of dividing a big group into small groups, subgroups, and it works very well, I can say, because the engagement and motivation of students is increasing in such a processes. And I think that we have to adapt all teaching methods into online and virtual environment, and it makes sense and it helps and is useful for students and for teachers also. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiana. Michael from Austria, and then Mikhail.
Yes, thank you. Ben said that he don't really know how to handle the situation now when there are some pupils at home and some pupils in the classroom, and how to deal with it, and then also in the distance learning. We don't have to forget, for example, in my school, they have 38 hours school a week with 12 different teachers. And when every teacher try to make, for example, project-based learning or some sophisticated things, that's absolutely horrible for the students because they don't really know where to take the time. So some periods of traditional learning converted into e-learning, I think it's good. I think that's not wrong, and we don't always have to make this sophisticated things, but we have to communicate in the teacher with all the teachers in the class. To say, okay, 1 week, this lesson or this subject can make project-based learning, the others step back and maybe give not that much assignment like the week before. So this has to be we have to think about that, because in some schools there are a lot of teachers in the class, and I know, and it was in March and April, a lot of teachers were really motivated. But the students, we lost some of them because there was so much to do, and in May we reduced that, and then we saw, okay, that's much better, and the outcome is much better. So we have to think about it.
Before I hand over to Michael, very briefly, because you touched upon a very important aspect, it's the cooperation between the teachers. After Michael's intervention, let's look at that. How did you deal with that? I know Ben had an example about how to ensure overall learning progress together with of students, in other subjects, not only yours. I know Michael here had experience on collaboration among teachers to ensure exactly what you addressed now, that the people don't do 7 projects within 1 week. So maybe we'll look at that aspect afterwards of collaboration and cooperation. Now, Michael, please.
Okay, thank you. So I think that it's difficult to quickly switch from one system to another. Students and also teachers are familiar with classroom work, they know how to work it, and when we try to redesign this program at the online, it's very hard. At first, we need to redesign existing programs, how to implement these programs, because learning outcomes, how can we teach this? Everything is for the face-to-face learning. At first, we need to redesign the programs, and after this, it's very hard environment. When we are in the college or somewhere else where is the educational institute, at that moment, environment is for the learning. And when students are at home, their environment is at home, and they don't think that they are teaching, and it needs to change. So teacher must be at that moment teacher must think differently at that moment. And of course, for this they need technical knowledge, and reinforcement is needed in this area, because the teacher must use different tools to be interesting his or her lesson. And it's necessary to think about the new approaches to pedagogical skills and student motivation. How can we do this? Because it's different where we are in online. And as I mentioned before, it's very important to make some different exercises, and the teacher must provide engagement in the session.
Thank you very much, Mikhail. I want to repeat the question before, and maybe also participants want to come in, either in the chat or by raising your voice. What about the cooperation between teachers? What can we learn from the time during the COVID crisis, distance learning? How did we manage to cooperate between teachers that were working with the same learners? To ensure that they are not bombarded doing 7 projects at the same time, or that we ensure that there is progress in all areas and not just one, because one teacher just gives them too much work. Well, what are your experiences with that? Michael, please, from Austria. I just add Michael from Austria, not to confuse with Mikhail.
Where I start now? In March, when the crash is coming, we had 2 days to collect information to bring the students online. And in this time, we developed a program to get the teachers engaged into this whole topic, and start with e-learning 2 weeks after. So I think, and this the professionally the teacher is the first thing we started, and we were not think about how the students can do this, because they can do this. And during this teaching, the teachers, there pops up some types of teachers. One who like to make the live lessons because they feel comfortable with it. This is the substitution of their daily lessons. And some of them tried blended learning and flipped classroom. And when we come together in this trainings, we saw that there are different types of teachers also, and then you can communicate. Okay, you do this thing because you don't have small children; they are not at home because the kindergarten is also closed. So I will take the part blended learning, and you do the live sessions because you prefer that. So in a training situation, when you started on day 1, you communicate with each other, and that's also the key point between teachers, not between teachers and students, also between teachers and teachers. And then you have to make restrictions and have to make a plan. Who's doing the live lessons this week, and who's doing the live lessons the next week, and so we can handle this much better when we talk to each other. And yeah.
Thank you, Michael. There is an interesting comment in the chat. You might have read it from Olena, saying biggest challenge is students' motivation. So we shall really focus on the learner and the learner activity, supporting what was said in the panel. Coming back to that, how do we support learners in adjusting to the new forms of learning organization, being more independent, more self-directed, maybe working more with other learners instead of directly with the teacher? What is your experience? How did you support? I see Julian is raising his hand. You're muted. Sorry, Julian.
I just wanted to reinforce a point that Mikhail was just making. I mean, I think one of the exciting things about distance learning, distance digital learning, is that it does create new possibilities for collaboration between teachers, as Michael was just pointing out, and we tend to conceptualize it as something extra to do. I mean, either we say, oh no, we're not going to do classroom teaching, we're going to do distance teaching, or we say, oh my God, I've now got to do classroom teaching for some, and in addition, I've got to do distance learning for those who can't make it back to the classroom. But that's only thinking about with the existing practices and sort of translating them or adding to them. We also need to be able to think about how we can sort of fundamentally change those existing practices. So it may be that, you know, one teacher can teach two classes in terms of the broadcasting, the live broadcasting part of it, whereas another teacher can be doing other work, can be working with groups, or can be providing developing exercises or providing feedback. So I think there is scope here for more joined up work between groups of teachers, you know, in order to find sort of solutions. Now, I fully take on Mikhail's point that to start with, we don't have these practices, we don't have the resources, we don't have the know-how. So we have to start pragmatically and incrementally from what we've got. But I think over time, we need to be looking for new ways of doing things, because I think there could be some real advantages which come out of these ways of working.
Thank you, Julian. I see Michael wants to come in again.
Yes,
or is your hand
first
still
I want to
raised?
reply to Julian, because this collaboration between teachers to lower the amount of time we spend with distance learning, because it's a new technology we use, and for some of us or for most of us, and that's the point. I said it before with the videos with the students. I told them to do. I think this video thing is a big key to also bring the students into the school situation, because they watched a lot of YouTube videos, they have their favorite YouTubers, but then, oh, okay, suddenly the teacher made a video and he's talking about the stuff we need in school. And when we have parallel classes, then we can record a video and the other class also can watch this video. And so we have more time to give feedback to the students. And this will also motivate students and force them to have more engagement. So I think this point of Julian is a big thing, because we can really collaborate, and videos, I think, is a key. We can do this. To the question Florian said, to the question in the motivation and how to support the students. I think in a school there are always maybe 2-3 teachers who are really technical nerds, and this has to be they have to be the first responder on technical issues. And I think we can really good handle this to reduce their hours and reduce their presence in the classes, to do the technical support at the beginning. And I think after 1-2 weeks, the students are ready and set up for distance learning. So this was my experience. We only needed 1 or 2 weeks, and every student was in the system. Every student watched the live sessions. Every student could turn in their assignments. And so I think the support at the very beginning, and everything I heard now is that it's really important not to try to everything at once. When we start to substitute the classroom in the e-classroom and do live sessions, then we can we have an augmentation, because we can record, for example, the lessons and have more functionality and can show them to pupils who have maybe no internet access at the time, or their laptop is used by their father or mother because they are already at home. And so these are possibilities, and we can take step by step the next actions, because when you do live sessions online and you can record it, then the next question for sure is how can we make a quick feedback, for example, and this take us to the next step, and then the real questions come to us as a trainer, and then we can improve their knowledge about the technology.
Thank you, Michael. Very, very interesting. Ben, you have a reaction, and then Tiona, please.
Yes, I would like to have or give a reaction on the how to motivate and how to support really learners in this new forms of learning. Somewhere in March, the lockdown came, and we as teachers, we all had to work differently, and the pupils had to work differently, and we all did our best. We had good practices, we had bad practices, and we all learned from it. Now the situation is a bit more normal. In regular terms, pupils are back at school, and we're just working. And one of the mistakes I see my colleagues, some in my school, some also in other schools, making is at this moment just going back to business as usual. While maybe now it's the time, when you have your pupils in your classroom, to teach them how to work effectively once the situation is there again, that we have to go to blended learning or 100% distance learning. I've tried, not only tried, I've rearranged some of my lessons from classic lectures, exercises, etc., to a more project-based approach, where I just give an assignment with goals that pupils need to meet and with resources that they can use, and they have to start working on it. And in a structured way, in several steps that they have to go through to work themselves from an idea to a finished product. Because that approach they can also use if they have to stay at home. And I think it's very important that we realize as teachers that the way we will have to teach has probably changed forever. I think distance learning, blended learning is not here to go away again. I think it's here to stay, and that we also need to adapt and train our pupils and even train ourselves in these new approaches and not just go back to business as usual.
Tiona, I hand over to you for last reaction, and I would like to address a related question.
Yes, thank you, Florian. I wanted to go back to previous topic, about teacher cooperation, and I wanted to say something. I could not bring the exact example of the specific cooperation between the teacher and the learning institution, but I think that this is it is very important to organize some hubs on system level. We have a good experience, I think, and positive experience in Georgia, and I wanted just to share this experience to participants. It helped us also as a teachers, and I think it was a really important help from the Ministry of Georgia, which organized groups of teachers from different modules and from different programs. I was a member of entrepreneurship teacher group, and we as a group of the same modules were organized meetings where we could share our experiences, our views about distance learning, blended learning. We updated the whole program and the whole module. We collected different learning materials, and in the end we had really good results because we could rearrange the module from the face-to-face to distance learning. We did even better from our perspective than it was before. So it created a great opportunity for us. And I think that cooperation is really very important and helpful in this period.
Thank you, Tiona.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiona, for sharing this. And I think it's directly related to the points raised before and linked to that question that I want to address. In all we just discussed, we saw that actually teachers need to be prepared for this situation. So we know within the crisis, there was a lot of peer learning going on. Teachers helped each other to make the step from the normal classroom teaching to distance learning teaching. But how about the professional teacher development? Is there a direct reaction in your particular countries to the crisis, to the new need? Is there something particularly focused around learner activity, how to increase learner motivation, how to engage learners? What are your experiences with professional teacher development in that regard? Anybody? Also, please, participants, share your thoughts, share your experience. Ben, please.
Yes, at this moment in Belgium, we see a lot of initiatives popping up where schools or companies, even private companies, start giving trainings on how to deal with COVID situations and how to deal with online teaching and blended learning. I've attended one of them. Must say I wasn't that excited about it because it was more about the theoretical part and the theoretical ideas behind blended learning than about, okay, what can we do in reality? What can I do in the classroom with my pupils? So it was more theoretics and less practice. But we see all these initiatives popping up. So hopefully there are also a few that are really of high quality. And hopefully this will help colleagues of mine in Belgium to get more familiar with blended learning and how to facilitate this for their pupils.
Thank you, Ben. I hand over to Julian. Just a quick comment before. I think that aspect of the difference between collaboration and cooperation also needs to be stressed. When we talk about the work, the common work of teachers. So that is one big topic to address when we talk about continuous professional development of teachers for active learning. So please, Julian, I hand over to you.
Yeah, I mean, on the professional development issue, I mean, I think that there's a couple of key things to keep clear here. I mean, the first is that teachers need to have the motivation, the belief that it is important to master these new technologies and new pedagogies. The truth is that quite often teachers know about new skills, they know about new technologies, but they don't actually apply them. They carry on in the old way. This has been the case for many years. Why don't they do it? Because it's too difficult, because they don't think they can do it, because they don't think it really matters. So I mean, part of it is motivating teachers to take this on. Today we're lucky, we're listening to teachers, dynamic teachers, creative teachers who are doing it. And, you know, I, for one, am impressed. But we all know that a lot of other teachers who are not, who are defeated, who don't feel they can do it. And I think the other part of the story is giving teachers the belief that they can do it, you know, that they're not too old, you know, that they still can learn. And that's the same message there as with all learning. It is showing teachers that they can learn incrementally. You know, they don't need to learn everything in order to be able to learn. It is to make sure that there are things that teachers learn how to do that they can be successful at. So there are some tried and tested tools and activities that they can do and feel good at, but also opportunities for teachers to be creative. You know, for teachers to have fun making their own videos or designing their own things and to feel good about themselves. And I think perhaps what perhaps is most important in terms of teacher support is the ongoing support, not the workshops, not the online courses, not the initial preparation, but the ongoing support often from other colleagues or from somebody who can help them to keep them going, to overcome the challenges, to give them feedback, and to help them keep experimenting and learning.
Thank you, Julian. Before I hand over to Ben, a very quick question to all of you. You know, we experienced within the COVID-19 crisis during the shutdown and the distance learning that there was a lot of teacher-to-teacher support. What can we learn from this for the post-COVID situation where we might end up in a blended situation, or we're all back to classroom, we don't know yet. It's very different in different regions, even cities, it's different. One school is open, others are closed, some are home, some are in the classroom. What can we learn from this period where we had a lot of teacher peer-to-peer support for now, for managing this shift from I would say rather traditional pedagogies to a mixed pedagogy setting where we apply many different pedagogies, active and traditional ones? What can we learn from that? So I hand over to Ben for his reaction, and then to Michael.
Yes, I would like to have an addition to what Julian was saying. I totally agree with his points. And I also wanted to add that headmasters, school management should first of all facilitate that it is okay for teachers to fail, that it is okay for teachers to make mistakes, because towards our pupils, we always say it's okay to make mistakes, because mistakes are points where you learn. But as ourselves, as teachers, a lot of us don't allow ourselves to fail. We see giving a bad lesson or maybe struggling with some technology stuff. We see that as a bad practice and as something we shouldn't do. While we should do that, we should try and sometimes fail and learn from that. And I often try new stuff or crazy stuff in my classroom, and sometimes this terribly fails. But I notice that my pupils don't mind. They rather enjoy me trying new things for them, and they having several things they can do, not only take regular lectures, but also do crazy projects with hot air balloons and so on and so on. They're having fun while learning, and learning should not only be about fun. That's not the point I want to make, but pupils do enjoy that sometimes something goes wrong and that the teacher is also learning amongst it. So allowing teachers to fail is something that is for me also very important, I think, in order to grow and to become a better teacher, whatever the situation.
Thank you, Ben. Michael and then Mikhail.
Thank you. You asked what we can learn, or what we can learn now because of this cooperation from the teachers. I think the first thing we can learn is that we don't have to wait that a headmaster or the management act. I think what shows us was there was a need to train the teachers in e-learning, and when we asked it and when we waited for it for an official okay, then this would happen in May or so. And so 2 weeks later, because we were so engaged and we fill out the forms, we send the forms, and then there comes an okay one higher level, and so we can start it right away. And I think this is one thing when we act as a unit, the teachers, we can make much more of it. For example, in Austria, this is in Austria, we have the distance learning MOOC, and it was in August. This is okay, but every further course is starting in October, for example. And we had in September a lot of COVID-19 cases in schools, and classes were closed, and there is no need in October for that. There is a need on the first day in school of that. And this is what we can learn when we work as a unit, the teacher, we can really act as a unit, and this is what we have to do now.
Thank you, Michael. Mikhail.
Okay, thank you. So what we learned in this time with this coronavirus is that we need some actions. We need to strengthen human resources, that's the first one, and the second is strengthening material resources. These are both very important things for the online learning. For example, in our college during this coronavirus, we had tried online teaching, and technically when you teach these IT programs, it's very hard. because mostly students don't have powerful computers, and to teach them server and very this kind of programs is very hard. So we had to do something, and what we have learned is that effectively use existing resources which we have now. So we make a remote connection to our college lab, and we make remote connections to our college. So students could connect our college server and use these resources. So it was very good because everyone could have strength computers. And for the future, I think that we must think about this, because high-speed internet, powerful computers, it's very important for students and also for the teachers. And it interrupts, if we don't have such kind of materials, it interrupts the process.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Michael. I briefly want to intervene before I hand over to Tiona and Julian, noticing also the time that it's running. I emphasized in my introduction at the very beginning that the relevance of introducing more active learning elements for learners' competence development is obvious. So it's the current situation we live in to prepare learners for the world we live in, but also there is enough scientific evidence. So Julian raised the question of why they don't do it, why it's not done by every teacher. And maybe we'll discuss very briefly that question of what can be done by every teacher in a very simple way to enrich the traditional pedagogy with more activating, engaging pedagogy. It would be nice to have one quick round again on tips and tricks, but I first hand over to Tiona and Julian on the comments they planned to do before, please. Please, Tiona, you're muted.
Yes, thank you. I wanted just to make a small comment about teacher cooperation and what we have learned from it. Based from our experience, I would mention this one more time. We learned that this cooperation is really very useful, and our group will continue, our group of teachers from the country will continue work on the new initiatives, on the new projects, and we learned that cooperation is important not only during this pandemic, also after this pandemic will be very useful, and we can achieve our goals and best results, I think.
Thank you, Tiona. Julian, please.
Yeah, just to make the point that teacher cooperation can't be taken for granted. I mean, our surveys of teaching in countries at the ETF show that in quite a lot of countries, a lot of teachers don't cooperate very much. I mean, they work by themselves. They prepare, they plan, they make their materials all by themselves. And where that happens, and sometimes it's quite an established habit, they're lost. I mean, if something changes, it's very difficult. They don't have the habit of collaboration, and they're left to try and solve all these problems all by themselves. Now, I think at the system level, we need to think about this. And there needs to be more work to establish patterns of collaboration amongst teachers all of the time. Who knows what the next challenge will be? Maybe not COVID, maybe something else. And I think that if we look at how well different countries have adapted to this challenge, I think we do find it in countries where there is strong collaboration, or where the school takes a coordinating role, where there is someone in the school who is working with teachers to bring them up to speed with changes in technology. Those schools have been quicker to respond and more comprehensive. What I mean is, there's not just a few teachers in those schools who've kept it going, but the majority or even all of the teachers in such schools have kept it going. Because we've got to get beyond just a few, dynamic teachers. We've got to get it that it's all the teachers who could do this. And I think that's the challenge we're in at the minute. Because let's be honest, it is not all teachers who have managed to make this transition. We shouldn't kid ourselves just because we're listening to those teachers today who have managed to do it.
Thank you very much, Julian. I see Lee Eisenberg who wants to come in. Maybe you just tell us where you're from and who you're working for, or what's your background.
Yes, I'm calling you from Haifa. Good afternoon to everyone. Haifa is in Israel on the Carmel Mountain. I'm expert and innovator of TVET education, and I have a short comment. We speak a lot about the students and we speak about the teachers separately, but I think we should work together, especially in these days when we face uncertain, so many uncertain situations. I would suggest that we should work what is called community of learners, which means the teacher is not just an educator or he gives the knowledge and the skills. He is part of the community with its students, working together. As Julian said, collaboratively, not just with other teachers, but with the students, because we have to show these days much more empathy to our students. We should show them that we care about them. And through these soft skills, we should also integrate the cognitive, either the topics and the skills. But I would suggest let's work together because we all feel, adults and students, that we are facing very, very challenging and difficult times.
Thank you very much for sharing that point, Eli. Very, very helpful. Thank you very much. It would already be a very good ending message, but we still have some minutes to go. So I come back to the initial point I made. So I made in my introduction the relevance of adding creative learning elements to learners' competence development, I think, quite clear. It would be interesting now to have a last round of all panelists making a quick reaction to that. What can be done by every teacher, also those that have not managed to move, as Julian explained and also Eli now. What can be done by every teacher to add active learning elements, to focus more around the learner instead of focusing around the teacher? What could be done? Maybe we start this time with Mikhail from Georgia, please.
Okay, thank you. This is very interesting point because it's very important to use creative methods, to use methods which is interesting for students. And at that moment, I think that we must use technologies. We live in the era of development of technologies, and that's why we need to use this. Now here exists too much online platforms, cloud systems, which can be used by teachers to teach effectively. And this is the one thing we can use. For example, Moodle platform can, with this platform, we can have some exams, we can have some projects and upload and download files, and it helps very much us. And also it's very interesting for the students because they can use this online and they can work collaboratively. Also, there are many tools which can be used to work simultaneously in one file and done a very good job, and it's the effect of synergy, and it's very good. So I think that teachers must use new methods. They need to be more familiar with the new platforms, and very important is cloud system, which we can use to effective our resources, because everyone don't have, as I mentioned before, don't have powerful computers, powerful machines. So we can use simulators, we can use cloud systems, and it will help us to teach online effectively.
Thank you, Mikhail. Ben, please.
Yes, I would just like to give a very small example of what you could do to activate your pupils more. It was something I noticed during a study visit to a school in Copenhagen in Denmark. There they had a rule that during a lesson the teacher could only talk for 10 minutes. The rest of the lessons the pupils should be active, talking to each other, working, giving examples. Pupils had to teach, had to make presentations about topics, etc., etc., etc. And one way to achieve this in that school was to take away the desk of the teacher in the classroom. In those classrooms, the teacher did not have a desk. He was just one of the guys or one of the girls in the classroom, not having a fixed place and just being one of them, giving short instructions for maximum 10 minutes. And then it was all to the pupils to do their work. And when I saw that, it was mind-blowing for me.
Thank you.
Teachers, we always like to talk, we teachers. We like to listen to ourselves, but we should try to talk less and leave a lot of the talking and the work over to the pupils.
Thank you. That's a very nice example. Tiana, do you want to share something with us?
Yes. I think that the most important is to translate face-to-face methods and resources into digital. This is the most crucial element of learning. And I have also experience, I think, interesting experience of teaching entrepreneurship. First, it was a little bit hard to me, and I was planning the teaching process from real face-to-face to online, and then I analyzed that it was absolutely possible. I had a group of students. We developed together business models. It was based on group works, and actually we used to some forms like flip charts in the real classroom, and we with my students, I could organize this real classroom experience in a virtual classroom. So it was very interesting. It was very motivating for students during this pandemic period. We created some projects during this online teaching, and I think that it had even better results than it had before, because all students were actively participating, and it was very transparent process who on which topic was working, and it was I think useful for me and for my students also.
Thank you, Tiana. Thank you for sharing that. Hand over to Michael.
Yes, thank you. The question was, how can we activate the teachers who are not really in this topic right now? I think that the answer is the same. Like, how can we activate people? We have to be there for them. We have to show them that they have support all the time. And we had a really successful online course from March to May. And in July and August, when the schools were closed for holidays, we get a lot of messages. Is there a follow-up? Is there a possible that you show us again how to start with the class? And the first email was in the last week of holiday. You are not alone. This was the topic of this email for the teachers. And after this email, we made an online course on the third day of the new school year, and we have over 70 attendances there, and it was great. We talked about the news in our Microsoft Teams environment, and talk about how to make the classes online, how to add the pupils. So we did a follow-up from the online course in May. So and to be there for them and to support them, automatically take away the fear from this technology. And they started right away in the second week when the classes are when everything was done. And the second they started with it, and now the first class, when the first class closes, this was yesterday. It was no problem to switch into a distance learning situation. So support, be there for them, be there for the pupils, and I think this is and communication, and I can't say it enough. I think communication is absolutely the key to transform it into this e-learning.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much. I'm aware that we cannot answer all questions that were raised before the webinar, but what I can tell you is that there will be a couple of blogs and a couple of videos posted on ETF Open Space after the event, where we all will try to address the questions that have not been tackled during the webinar. I noticed that there are many challenges, as we can read now in the chat, that have not been addressed. We try to do that not only during the blogs that we post, but I will tell you in a second about an ETF initiative focusing on teaching and learning. It's called ETF Creating New Learning Initiative, where we can further work on that topic. So this is a starting point for us. Julian, a very quick last word, and then we'll close because it's time.
Yeah, just really quickly, one tip I would give to get teachers exploiting the potential of the new situation is to do something which they should have been trying to do in the past, but was genuinely difficult. And now it's become easy. And that is to open the walls of the classroom and to let other people in. So instead of the teacher, the vocational teacher, trying to be the one person through which everything about their profession, about their métier is being communicated, bring in other people. I mean, bring in other workers and professionals and business people and skilled engineers and people into your classroom is easy to do. And you can control it. Instead of getting someone there who's going to bore on for an hour, you can just give them a short slot and control what they're going to say. And my experience is, you know, very often it's not what you say, it's who says it. And the impact on young people, or the amount of learning, the responsiveness of a message which comes from someone who's doing that job is far greater than it would be if you gave it yourself.
Thank you very much, Julian. Thank you very much to all the panelists and to all the participants for the good interaction in the chat and also the discussion. Thanks a lot. Maybe, Chiara, you can put the last slide very quickly. We will post the English and the Russian recording of the webinar on Open Space. We will post there as well a Jamboard that summarizes the key messages from the webinar. We will as well have the blogs and videos that Ben and Michael already produced and will be producing. What I can say, and I think it's important, what I mentioned before, the Creating New Learning Initiative works around the topic of teaching and learning and looks at innovations in teaching and learning. This is exactly what we were talking about today. So this is the area where we can continue working together. Please take a look at the link, check out the opportunities for cooperation. Let us know the areas you would like to work on together. There are lots of opportunities. You see also a couple of ETF webinars coming up on formative summative assessment, on graduate tracking, and on digital skills and competence, or digital online learning fact sheets in a couple of countries. So I want to thank you honestly for all the time you spent today with us and for your patience in the very beginning. It was a pleasure having you all, and I wish you the best for your work and also for your private life in this special period. And please, let's continue working with each other. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank
Goodbye.
you very much.
Thank you very much, all the participants of the webinar. I think it was very useful and very interesting. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye to everyone.